this film was extremely personal to me, not in a literal sense, but there were many things that I identified with that I connected to. And as far as playing a veteran and somebody with the TBI, we did so much research and interviews with service members, with people that had TBIs, and we even had occupational therapists in the scenes with us to make sure that we were doing justice to that experience. But I think to me there were so many different themes that I connected with. It's still so emotional when I watch the movie. Just that feeling of not knowing where home is, and not knowing even if you find it, if you can keep it, and just assuming you're going to fuck it up. And even the relationship with Jane Habishaw, and that feeling, I've recognized that feeling before, like with the therapist, where you like feel seen and loved and understood, and then you're like, wait, I pay you, and kind of having that like heartbreaking revelation. So there were different things that I connected to, not on a literal sense. One conversation with Lila. She's the smartest person I've ever met in my life. Sorry, Justine and Brian.
Oh, no offense.
And this was a movie that, you know, it was a book, and so it had to be broken open and explored and changed to become a feature. And everything that she had to say about it, and her ideas and even her visual instincts were just, I mean, I was gobsmacked by her and continue to be. And every day on set, she really does have instincts that are not of this world.
Well, to people who don't know, I mean, I'm glad you do. A causeway, literally, it's a bridge. It's a bridge over low or wet ground. But the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway in New Orleans, it is one of the world's longest bridges over water. It is 24 miles long. And it's terrifying to drive across. When you are on it, you can't see where you're going, and you can't see where you're coming from, and you can't pull over. And in addition to that being the site of an accident that happens prior to the film's events, but is very important to those events for this character, that bridge, that journey across the bridge, struck me as an apt metaphor for a number of the journeys in the film.
What happens is that you meet these two characters who are trying to navigate their way through their own personal traumas. Some that have been entrenched in their traumas a little longer than the other. Both people who have been labeled as disabled in their own way. And I think that is something that this movie tries to explore, is that, you know, trauma can feel like a disability, and what it means to unveil these disabilities that we try so hard to cover in our lives. Like, I think most of us in the world are doing everything we can and holding each other, you know, by strings sometimes when we're dealing with our trauma. But we do this thing of trying to conceal it in the best possible way that we can. And then what happens when we make a bond with someone who has a trauma almost as equal to or greater than, and what that means. And I think when you find our characters, you see them in this kind of like place of where they are in this abandon, because they're like, oh great, I finally found somebody who sees me and actually cares about me. I find it very brilliant the way that it was directed, because if you notice that Lindsay barely talks, you know, when she's going and confronting a lot of things, and then all of a sudden she meets James, and then there's this burst of energy and joy for both of them. And I think that is something that, I mean, I know I personally am constantly trying to find a connection. I always feel like I'm doing this great juggling act of seeming like I'm together. And then all of a sudden it's like these wounds that are underneath it all. And I think that this movie presented to me at an amazing time, because I think there was a lot of confrontation with me internally. And with the world around me, that this movie allowed me to kind of remove the bandages and to remove, you know, the guise of acting as if though, you know, we all have it together, because we don't. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about these characters and the direction of this movie, is that it peeks through the cracks of what that is for our psyches, for our hearts and our feelings of just trying to hold it together, you know.
Yeah, I can acknowledge that it was wildly serendipitous, I would say, how this came together. I read the script, I responded to it immediately, and I found out a few weeks later that Jen had also read the script and had a similar reaction. And I think only a week later we had dinner, And then, I mean, upon first reading the script, my feeling was that Brian had to play James Oakwood. So, and then it was really only a few weeks after that that we reached out to Brian, and about a few months later that we were in production, initially.
I know for me that when I was presented with this project, the first words that were uttered to me were, there's a new piece entitled Soldier Project, directed by Lila, and that was as far as they got. And I was like, oh, because we have a history that goes back so far, and I've always rooted for her and her success because I know that she's incredibly talented, and we've had the fortune of coming up alongside each other, but never the paths crossing to where we could actually make it happen. And so when I found out this was her first feature, I was like, I'm all the way in. And then as they finished, they said Jennifer Lawrence, and I was like, oh, well, this is just gonna be. I mean, because I just want to say that this film is just another testimony to the amazing craft that Jennifer does in her lifetime. She brings her entire heart and soul to it, and you have no choice but to kind of lay it bare. She'll just shake the shit out of you until you do. And so I kind of, mostly physically, but yeah, no, it was a no-brainer, and there's just a true gift with these three women up here to craft something this vulnerable and something that is also accessible to people who I believe that people need to see this movie because of that. Yeah, I champion you guys all the way. Yeah, very grateful.